Good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, January 10th, 2017. This is our first webinar for 2017, Students as Video Producers. Again, we're doing the Tech Tuesday webinars instead of our Wednesday webinars that we've done in the past. My name is Mark Oakton. I'm a coordinator with the Instructional Design and Professional Learning Division. I get to work with technology and with the professional growth system. With me today, I have Chris Justice. I'm a Nevada Ready 21 project facilitator who has been gracious enough to join me. So welcome, Chris.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
All right, here's a quick look at the agenda and what we're going to talk about today. We're talking about why students should produce video. I'm looking at some of the steps in the process of producing video, some of the ideas that we have, and also we're going to look at some tools that we have to produce video. But first, I think that we need to address the elephant in the webinar, and not the elephant in the room, is cost. As I look at all this potential equipment that you could use, it can seem a little bit overwhelming. It's definitely a significant investment in order to get the resources, and some of these look a little bit dated without a doubt. However, chances are that you already have what you need. You do not necessarily need expensive cameras or devices to start having your students produce video. Whether you have just one iPad in your classroom or a classroom full of MacBooks, there's something that you can do to help your students to produce video. Now, when I talk about video production, I get people who start thinking big time. Our minds immediately go to these Hollywood-style productions, thinking about George Lucas or Peter Jackson quality special effects and dramatic action and skilled actors. And if that is what you are thinking of your students doing, you are setting yourself up for some pretty severe disappointment. That'd be the equivalent of expecting our kindergartners to write something like War and Peace. On a more realistic level, it's really easy with the tools that we have available to us now that we can create video, and even something as simple as a PowerPoint presentation can be converted to a video. But I do want you to think a little bit like Hollywood. Not every script gets produced. Not every piece of student writing needs to be to go to full production either. Collaborative projects do make a great vehicle for production, and that collaboration makes it possible for students to create something that is of substance at from whether it's kindergartners or our seniors in high school. And so before we get into the how of having students produce video, we want to talk a little bit about why. And this is really my time to monologue for just a few minutes and to get on my soapbox. And some of you have heard my spiel before, if that's the case. And if you keep showing up to the webinars, you're going to hear it again. I apologize in advance. But one thing that's really, really, really important to me is this instructional shift. We are looking to have a shift in instruction from our teacher-centered lecture with students as passive recipients to a more student-centered inquiry and discovery-based pedagogy with teachers as advisors, mentors, coaches, guides, and facilitators. And we know that works best for real learning because the students are active participants rather than passive recipients. And so this shift towards a constructivist classroom has students building their own understanding through real and through virtual experiences in your classroom. And students become aware of their own learning, and that awareness really does shift the responsibility to the learner. We recognize that this is very, very difficult for teachers much of the time. It's really easy to stand up in the front of the class and talk to or at sometimes the students. We know a lot more than they do, and we feel really comfortable getting up and just imparting our knowledge, hoping that they'll just suck it all in and absorb it. But that's not always the case, and so sometimes we have to do what's a little bit more difficult and put students first and have them and exercise a little bit more restraint and not share everything we know with them and have them discover that on their own and construct that knowledge. In other words, we're trying to light the fire. I always have to talk a little bit about assessment. We're at least on the secondary level where I was, we were really, really good at summative assessment and not so good at formative assessments. technology generally, and more, very specifically, student-produced video can be used both as summative and formative assessment. And of course, what are we assessing but the standards? Technology allows us to reach those Nevada academic content standards. In fact, some of them require the use of technology. I'm thinking specifically about the writing standards and the references to using multimedia in those writing standards, specifically Standard 6. Remember your purpose. This is not using technology for the sake of using technology. That content is king, and it's really important that we reach that content, and the technology is that vehicle. And I'll talk about that metaphor of the vehicle a little bit more to help us to reach those standards. I always talk about engagement. Engagement equals fun. Students are motivated and engaged when creating video because it's a fun activity, and they might not even realize that they are actively learning when they're doing it. When our students are disinterested or disengaged or even distracted, they're not learning. And this really helps to provide that focus for those students. As long as it is, I'm going to put the caveat that our instruction needs to be high quality, needs to be rigorous and standard based. And when they're engaged in that type of activity, the learning is bound to happen. We need to be really cognizant that we're providing opportunities for all of our students in all of our schools to help them prepare to participate in the economy that they're going to inherit in over the next decade or so. And we really have an important opportunity to help level the playing field for some of our kids and to provide them access to the tools that they're going to need in order to be participants in this economy. And so that equity is, at least for me, a key component. Access, through this kind of instruction, we're giving kids access to more than what we know. The students aren't limited to just what we know or have experienced, but have access to the entire world and the cumulative experiences of so many more people than just us in the classroom, and we can open it up to them. A couple more and I'll be done with my soapbox. Technology integration in general and video creation very specifically allows us to give students the opportunity to demonstrate and to show what they know. And I think that nobody would argue against the fact that demonstration of learning really cements that learning in the minds of the learner. We tend to know something the most when we've taught it to somebody else, and we're giving students the opportunity to do that, to demonstrate their proficiency with the tools in their content and skill development. And you'll be amazed at what students develop or produce if you've never done this before. And as they are successful, success breeds success, and confidence builds upon itself, and our students will increase in their confidence and ability to produce even higher quality work. Self-expression, I think this is a great thing. One of our 21st century skills is being able to be creative. And so often we stifle the creativity in our classroom, and consider this as an opportunity for students to express themselves and build and be creative. Authentic, the tasks that we have, that we assign, the problems that they're solving need to be authentic. They need to be real and relevant to our students. And I think that with our use of video, we can definitely have them do that. Thinking critically, being able to consider problems in a thoughtful way, to go through the inquiry process, to exercise their inductive and their deductive reasoning, to examine information in light of evidence, whether it's positive or negative, to draw and test and evaluate conclusions. In many classes, students can exercise their creative thinking, and they can do that through this medium. I'm going to skip a couple of these because we are running short on time. Not that they are any less important, but they're very, very important. Choice. This is I want to shout out a big woohoo for choice. As students, because the buy-in the students will have as they have a choice in their activities will be really, really important, and that again transfers that responsibility to the learner. And so, first steps. As teachers, we have to be willing to embrace change. We have to think about our vision, can consider what we want our students to do as they're producing video, or consider the why. Why do we want them to make that shift from mere consumers of media and consumers of information to producers and curators of content? Keep in mind that if you think that, hey, I'm going to create this great project, my students are going to do all the work, and I can sit back and kind of take it easy, if that's your mentality with student video production, you're really mistaken. It is a lot of work, a lot of front end work in preparing for it, and a lot of work alongside the students as they are doing it. So consider how your projects are going to be assigned. Are you going to be working with groups? Are students going to be working individually? If it's a group project, how are you going to make sure that the workload is balanced and is fair? And how are you going to make sure that students in a group are not penalized when one or more individuals drop the ball? These types of things that you really have to consider. But that background planning really is the first step. And I like this image just to reinforce the purpose behind technology use. The purpose is not for, as you can see there, the fourth from the bottom bullet on the wrong answer side. The purpose is not for them to produce videos. The purpose of kids using technology is to raise awareness, start conversations, find answers to their questions. And you can go through the other items there. And that's just a sampling of possible purposes of why we want kids to use technology. Again, technology is the vehicle. It's not the destination. So I'm going to get off my soapbox and turn it over to Chris, who's going to talk about helping students to produce video in the classroom.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chris, and for the past 7 years at West Prep High School, I was a video production teacher. We produced 2 different weekly shows. One was called The Howl, and the other one was called The Growl. And they were pretty good. My students, every Monday, they came up with an idea. They brainstormed ideas. They wrote scripts. And by Thursday, their project, their package, their 1 minute long edited finished package needed to be finished, which was then all assembled and put into a weekly show and then uploaded onto YouTube, and the link was sent out to all the teachers. And it was really great. It was probably, I was a science teacher too, but I really, really, really loved my video production students. And I loved the process just because it's, my one class where students just could do whatever they wanted. My mantra was, I never said no to any idea, no matter how crazy it was. Sometimes there were some issues with that, but I tried to say no. I never tried to say no to an idea, and they just and because of that, they always surprised me with just creating these really, really awesome projects. And to watch them in teams is just amazing to put this all together. So I wanted to talk a little bit during my section of this presentation about the process. It is great to watch them get to that point where they can create, but they do need a little bit of structure. They need some guidance, and they need to know a process in order to be successful. It takes a long time. It can, especially when you first get started out. You might be surprised at how long it takes to actually plan, shoot, edit, and finish one of these videos. So making sure that you have enough time in your day for your students to finish their stuff is important. Let's see, what else? Another tip that I can give to you is ensuring that all of the students have a job and they all know exactly what that job is. So each of them has a role in the creation of their project. And I also believe that teachers should have a basic understanding of a couple different shooting tips, tricks, and editing terms that they can then impart to their students. And so that's what I wanted to go through as we talked about the pre-production, production, and post-production process. All right, so let's talk about pre-production first. And for this, what I want to do for you all is to give you 3 resources. In fact, I believe Mark is going to make these resources available to you. They are Google documents. So I've got 3 of them here, and we're going to start with the first one.
At the very end of the webinar, I will pull them up so you can download them.
So this is the Filmmaker's Planning Guide. Let me share my desktop. I think that's working right, I hope. All right, so this is the Filmmaker's Planning Guide. And I wanted to include this one. It's a pretty simple document, but I wanted to include it just because this is a document that you can give to your students at the very beginning of a project. It's a place where students can write down the project name, think about who might be the director, the captain, and then keep all of the students accountable by having them actually on a piece of paper is pretty important, I think. On this document, I also have for you all the process here, and this is completely editable too. So if there's stuff on here that you don't like or that you wanted to get rid of, you can absolutely delete it when you get your version or your copy. But it starts off with planning and writing. Oftentimes, students want to start shooting anything and everything, and that we kind of have to push pause on that, right? Because having a plan and having a written up script oftentimes is going to be where we start. And then we shoot, and then we start to think about assembling a rough cut, a final cut. Students always want to add the music and the sound first, and that's never how it's done in Hollywood, right? We start off with a rough cut, a final cut, and then all of those effects, the sound effects and the music and all that stuff, all comes at the very end. I've also created an area down here for notes that students could do. So what I would do, and you can feel free to make this your own, what I would do maybe even is add an area, maybe like if let's say that you're going to have students work Monday through Friday on this, and so have an area where you can initial on Monday and have the students write down what they did specifically to finish the project. That's what I would do. So just create another little table down here, and an opportunity for you all or for your students to add a little stamp in this area and then write out or even type out what they did to earn that stamp for the day. Keeping the students accountable is very important. Oftentimes you'll see if you don't do that, if a student doesn't know what they're supposed to be doing, then they'll just sit there, as you guys all probably know. Another thing I wanted to give to you guys is another little planner here. I found this is really helpful. We did a lot of nonfiction video production in my class, but I had a unit where we did a fictional one. And so another opportunity to write down the names of the people involved, and then just write down the character names, have students brainstorm something that could happen to those characters, write down that conflict in this area right here, and then think about those obstacles that those characters have to overcome. This is something that could happen right before script writing. I love this video right here. I'm not going to share it with you today, but the link is in here. So when you get your version of this pre-screenplay planner, definitely watch this. This is a video about Dustin Lance Black and his planning process, what he does before he writes one of his award-winning screenplays. He wrote Milk. I think he won the Academy Award for the movie Milk. Really, really cool. It's like a 7-minute video. It's student-friendly, and it just talks about all the wonderful, crazy things that he does just to plan. And I turned this video into a lesson too, because what he does is he takes a bunch of index cards and then lays out the entire cards that he can then kind of interchange and put into different orders depending on what he's trying to get. Anyway, watch that video. It's so great. And then the other pre-production template I wanted to give you guys was just a screenplay example. And I've kind of color coded this for you so that you can go through and even if you wanted to teach the different parts of a screenplay. Like this is the slug line, interior classroom day. An action block is, what happens here. You might even see these little MWS is short for medium wide shot. CU is not contact units, it's close-ups, right? And then down here is where you'd have the dialogue and those camera directions all throughout. So very good stuff. So there aren't just close-ups and medium close-ups. I put another link on this one too if you're curious for some more shot types, and I'll talk a little bit more about shot types in a moment. But one thing too that you can do with your students, what a real life script looks like. I always find this one, the Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, and so talking about to my students all about how these films start off, right? It's not just all have a lot of the action block sequences here, right? Here's some editing directions and camera directions right here. Here's a slug line so that they can see what this looks like. And you can even talk about, gosh, if you read this, this is all just exposition before we get to the very first line all the way down here, right? So students think that a script is just dialogue. It's not. Showing them a real live example is important too. So let me see what we got. All right, so that is some resources that you can use for pre-production and getting started with filmmaking in your classroom. Everything is completely customizable. I want to talk a little bit about production, and this is where I was going to discuss some of those tips and tricks. Not too many to make your brain go crazy, but I'll keep it easy. So for the first one, let's talk about some basic types of shots. I showed you that link earlier that there's a lot more than just these three, but these three I feel like are used the most. The wide shot is often used in the very beginning of a scene for an establishing shot. You know, it shows where we are. If we're hanging out at Levitt Middle School in one of the classrooms, we don't know that it's Levitt Middle School unless we first see a wide shot of Levitt Middle School. So having a wide shot at the very beginning of a scene is important. The medium wide shot is from the waist to the top of the head and often used in shots involving dialogue. This is also oftentimes called the cowboy shot because back in the day, back when they were making a lot more Western films, the cowboy shot, this is like from the shot of the gun and the holster up to the top of the cowboy hat. So the medium wide shot is used all throughout film history, right? And the close-up also very important too. The close-up helps audience connect with the characters, and it's the head. So I want to show you a shot here. Or actually, this is something that my students made just to showcase those three basic shots that I'd like to share with you. So give me 1 second while I get. Okay, I think this is it, right? All right, so let's watch. Those three shots with the subject centered. This might even be a medium shot, to be honest with you. And we've got the wide. Very good. Let's go back to this. So I want to talk about the rule of thirds. This is a compositional guideline that you can use both in photography and in video production. So what you have to do is imagine that you have a nice 16:9 TV screen, right? And this kind of like would be in the shape of this blue box right here that you see on the screen. And imagine that you put two lines going from top to bottom and then two more lines going from left to right. So we kind of make the Brady Bunch grid, this 3x3 grid. And what you want to do, so let me see if I can remember how to do this, Mark. Oh, there it is. I'm trying to find the laser pointer. So what you'd want to do then is you'd want to put your subjects somewhere along where these lines intersect. These areas of the screen are often the dominant areas of the screen and are aesthetically pleasing to the eye. And let me show you some examples. So this is, if you had someone looking off to their left, what you'd want to do is keep their eyes right there on the upper third, and then keep their eyes also in between the left third of that area. And that's a dominant area. Notice how she is gazing off into a bunch of empty space. And that's a good thing. That's what you want. If the individual is looking straight on at the camera, then you'd want to probably keep them. You can off-center them, absolutely, or you can make sure that their eyes line up on that imaginary line. Some cameras will actually have these thirds, these guidelines, actually in the viewfinder too. So In fact, you might even have a camera that already has that. Take a look at your iPhone. I think you can turn them on. Here's another one. If the subject is looking off and to the right, again, their eyes are on that upper third and in between the right third. And they're gazing off into distance, into nothingness, right? All right, so that's the rule of thirds, and that's a compositional guideline that you can now hopefully impart to your students. And you can find examples of the rule of thirds along with these lines all over the internet. Just Google it, right? For that, do a quick Google image search. Okay, so motion is also important. When you're shooting motion, you want to keep the rule of thirds going as well. And this, I'm going to show you this video in a second, but notice how this student right here, this student is kind of on that left third, and he's walking into a bunch of blank space right here, and that's the key. In the video that you're about to watch, he's also going to turn around. So the camera operator, what they'll want to do is they'll want to try to keep, depending on the direction that the person's facing, they'll want to move their camera so that they're either on the left third or the right third. Let me show you an example. And let's see, I think, nope, this is it. All right, let's watch. This is a short 9-second video. And we see the turn, and then the camera operator tries to allow and compensate for that movement. This is a little activity that my students do. It's actually really hard because what students want to do is keep this guy all the way in the center or all the way over to the right, right? So it's all about trying to remember the rule of thirds as you film. All right, so that is that. You oftentimes will see that, by the way, in any movie. Think of any movie that has a restaurant scene or something. Maybe there's a waiter, and what the camera needs to do is move from left to right. And every 9 times out of 10, you're going to see a waiter moving along with that camera on the left third of the screen. Watch for it next time, and you're going to be like, wait a minute, that's exactly what he's talking about. It happens, trust me. In fact, when I don't see it in movies, it hurts my eyes. There's this strobing effect that happens that is kind of disorienting, but I'm getting ahead of myself. All right, so let's talk now about some post-production. And what I'd like to do for that is talk about the match on action. So when you put 2 clips together, one wants to try to match the action in one shot and match it to the next. For example, imagine a shot of this arm reaching in and grabbing the door handle, and maybe even starting to open it. And the next shot should be maybe on the other side of the door with the door opening. This is matching that action. And you can disguise the cut, right? Sometimes they say that every cut in a film is a lie, right? And so you can lessen those lies by matching the action. So let's watch an example of a match on action sequence. I think there's multiple matches on action on this one. There's no sound, so just watch. Whoa, a little weird thing in there. Let me point out a couple things. So this is the main one. Take a look. Notice how the door is opening, and it's opening in the next scene. This is the key match on action sequence right here, right? It really, really disguises that punch in the face that is an edit. It disguises it whenever you match. And you'll see this examples all throughout film history too. Any movie, in fact, is going to have matches on action. In fact, most movies are shot with just one camera, and they just film one scene, stop, put the camera in a new location or a new angle, and then film the same scene over again. So that way they can make it appear like there's multiple cameras, and there's these matches on action disguise the fact that there's just one. throughout. Okay, so that was a match on action. I also wanted to point out another concept here. We use this often in nonfiction video filmmaking, is the concept of A-roll and B-roll. So A-roll and B-roll, these refer to video sequences. So the A-roll is going to be your primary roll, your primary footage, right here. So imagine maybe in on CNN, you're listening to someone, some talking head. The talking head interview sequence is going to be your A-roll, and it's not very fun just to watch someone talk. And so what they'll do is they'll add in their B-roll, and the B-roll footage helps tell the story. It makes it a little bit more compelling, makes the sequence a little bit more compelling. And so imagine CNN, they're talking, some talking head is talking about the election. And so the B-roll then would be the various actors and people involved with the election. And you can have more than just one shot, like I have in this example. You can have another shot, depending on how large the interview is or how long the interview is, right? And there's examples of A-roll and B-roll all through, and just turn on the news and you'll see examples of B-roll. B-roll is super, super important for nonfiction video production, and it's very simple for your students to go out and get. In fact, I always have my students start off with A-roll, get some interview, go interview the principal or go interview a teacher or something like that. And then depending on what the principal or the subject or whomever, whatever they talk about, the subject of their interview, then they go and find applicable B-roll. And sometimes B-roll can just be a picture that they download from the internet, or it can be a screen recording of a website or something like that, right? So it's very simple to make these films, even if you don't have a camera. So that is A-roll and B-roll. For post-production, I also wanted to give you guys some more resources too. And again, everything is completely customizable, and you're going to get this near the end. So I'll go through each of these: the nonfiction script template and the PSA assignment. So let me go share my screen. We'll go here. So like I said earlier, that the idea of having specific roles is very important for your students. If they don't have those, you'll have one or two students doing all of the work, and then the other 2 or 3 students just sitting there waiting. And so I try to give my students roles: producers, the interviewer, the camera operators, the B-roll person, the voiceover, the editor, and the script is written by everybody in the group. And then I have down here, this is what news organizations do, is they'll have two column scripts. One column is going to be your video, and then the other column is your audio. This is an area where students can write down questions in anticipation for some sort of an interview potentially. They can even transcribe what the interviewer said in this area here, and then think about what that B-roll, the corresponding B-roll would be. And so I gave this blank script out to my students on the Monday, and I would have a new team for them every single week. I would have them brainstorm, take 20 minutes, come up with an idea within their brand new group that they just got into for that week. They'd come up with their roles. They'd come up with the title of the package. I'd have a naming convention for the file on the computer that they're using. That way they can use, that way everyone knows what file it is. And then they would begin working on this, and they were not able to start the project, to start shooting, until this had been finished, at least the voiceover especially, and just some, maybe a couple interview questions here, and then they could go and check out that camera. And then keep notes all throughout. And again, you could even add in those extra boxes, those extra table boxes for a stamp or some sort of a signature, so that every day students can turn this in and get some sort of a partial grade maybe for each of the things that they do for each of the days. And then let's see, we've got finally an assignment. One of the most popular things that you can do in any class, I think, is make a public service announcement, a PSA. And I've given you guys some instructions that you can give to your students, including 30-second PSA, right? The objective, some instructions here, how long they would have it, the due date, what has to happen before they start. Um, let's see, what else? Pre-production, thinking of a topic, thinking about those shots, editing, and then even just a little grading rubric is nice. And then most importantly, I've given you just a lot of different ideas for PSAs. Students sometimes have a hard time brainstorming those ideas, so having a list is helpful. So that's one thing that I think you can customize depending on if you're elementary, middle, or high school, and give to your students right away if you wanted to. But let's see if I can get back. There we go. But that is what I have for pre-production, production, and post-production. Mark?
Thank you, Chris. We appreciate you coming in and
My
sharing some of
pleasure.
this information with us today. We're going to talk about a couple of these apps today that you can use to create video with your students. We're just going to demonstrate a couple of them. And I'm going to start with one of my favorite, and that is Toontastic. And let me share my screen here. All right, you should all see my iPad now. Unfortunately, you're not going to hear the sound in it, which is rather entertaining. I'm hearing it come through my headset as I have this hooked up to my computer, but you're not going to see that. And the Toontastic app, you just are going to click on, and you can't see where I'm clicking, but it's highlighting a little bit there. Create cartoon. And this is a really easy app to use. As you can see here, I have a few that have been created. I'm sorry. My little guys like to play with this and create some. So I'm going to create a new cartoon. And it's walking me through this, and it gives me the story arc. Or if you were a secondary English teacher like me, I call it Freytag's Pyramid. Story arc is good. And this goes through it walks you through creating each step of your story. And so it's really, really easy for kids. So when I touch the setup, I see that this paintbrush appears. It tells me I want to edit it. And it tells me that I need to pick a setting. Now, when I'm doing this, I don't like to, some of these settings the kids really like, like the Supertastic, I can't even pronounce the name, Shinjuku Smackdown. It's very, to me, it feels cluttered. I like to pick stuff that's a little bit more open. Maybe it's just because I have big fat fingers that get stuck trying to work in a small spot. So here's one that looks open. So I'm going to pick that one. And I just click on it, and it brings up the setting for me. And then you can see that the right arrow on the top right-hand corner is flashing. That's an indicator for me to push that to go to the next step. Now we get to choose our characters, or as Toontastic calls them, toys. And it automatically because I picked a wildlife scene, it automatically brings me up to the wildlife ones, but I have a little bit of as a high school English teacher, I like to teach some of the medieval literature, so I like to go back to that medieval stuff, and I'm going to pick a dragon and a knight. And then I can pick some other little props. I like these special effects. I'm going to have the dizzy birds. Because I have a dragon, I have to have a couple of fires. And I'm going to pick the props that I want. And now I'm going to move those to where I want them beforehand a little bit. I want to pinch my knight here and shrink him down a little bit and make my dragon larger, because bigger in dragons is definitely better. I'm going to want this bird over here later on, so I'm going to hide that over there. Now, because the fire and the birds are grayed out a little bit, those won't be seen initially in the video. Those are something that will pop up as a special effect. Now I get to click the start button at the very top, and to start recording. Now, as I'm recording, I will use my fingers and drag on the screen, and I can actually touch multiple characters and multiple items here at the same time. to make them interact with each other. And what you won't hear, you'll hear me talking. If I were a student, I would have written out my story in advance, and I would be recording this in real time. So I'm going to hit start. It gives me my countdown 3 to 1 to start, action, and I can go through and they're talking to each other and interacting. My dragon's getting mad. I click on his head, he breathes fire. When he breathes fire, the fire started. My knight's running away. The dragon's mad still, starts another fire. Knight continues running away. The dragon gets him with fire, and the cuckoo bird starts singing. Obviously, I would have a storyline that I've developed with this. As I stop it, it'll give me a chance to preview it. You can't hear the audio from it, but you can see what it would look like. Works really good for students who are building a narrative. My right arrow is flashing, so I'm going to click on it again. I could do this for each step. Now, one other thing with this is you can input background music in there. There is built-in background music. I'm going to pick out the emotion. I want this first scene to have music that would represent being afraid, or I can move it up, it represents being terrified. And so I can create that emotion that I want with the background music. Okay, I don't want to do the rest of it. I'm going to say done. I give my movie a title. Say who it's directed by. And now I can export this to my camera roll, and it's in the camera roll on the iPad. And that's it. And students can export it to their camera roll. They can share it with the class and submit it that way. And it's a really simple tool that, if my kindergartner can use it. He's used it for a couple of years. When he was 4 years old, he started creating his own Toontastic videos. And he knows how to do it completely independent of me. He makes lots of them and really has a fun time doing it. Now, teachers can use this. You can use this in your classroom to have students demonstrate a concept. Maybe if it's an elementary level, you've read a story and you want them to recreate a scene. It's really easy for them to do that using this app. We are really coming short on time here. We have a couple of other apps that I wanted to show you, Doceri and iMovie. I'm going to address Doceri a little bit in our next webinar, and so I will leave that for that time. And I'm going to ask Chris if he would show us a little bit of another free app. This one is a web-based app, which is WeVideo.
All right, I'm a huge fan of WeVideo. Let me show you the interface here. And I'll show you a quick little thing. So where am I? I went to wevideo.com, and you can log in with your nv.ccsd.net account. The media part is probably the most important, and this is where you can upload your media in the media tab. And then the home area is also important. This is where you can create a new video edit.
Chris, will you really quick back up and show them where they can access this again? How
Sure.
they can get WeVideo and how they can get an account?
Okay. Let's see. So go to wevideo.com, wevideo.com, and then you'll sign up right here. Use Google. So sign up with Google. And then you can use your own Gmail, your personal one, if you wanted to, but why not use the nv.ccsd.net or our AD logins, right? To log in, and there might be a couple extra steps that I've already gone through because I already have an account, but it's very simple to do.
If you don't know your
Yes.
NVCCSD, if you don't know how to log into your district Google account, send me an email and I'll send you the directions.
Okay. So very simple to do. Create new. They're called video edits. So we'll create that. We have to have created a project, and so I'm just going to add it to any project. Not a big deal. All right, and this is the workspace area. The very first thing that you do is grab the 3 flat stack of pancakes and make sure that you're on timeline mode. not storyboard mode. Storyboard mode is a little too simplistic. Timeline mode allows you to do things like add B-roll. All right, so I'm going to, let me get rid of that. I'm sorry, I'm looking for my media. There it is. So I'm just going to grab something really fast. That's me talking. I'm going to add that to my timeline. And let's say that I'm talking about an airplane. And so I'm going to grab a shot of an airplane and add it as my B-roll. And so now when I watch this, I can't wait to go to the next one next year. I am talking about airplanes, and then you see an airplane. Notice how there you can kind of see this extra footage on the sides. Let's actually fix that. So we're going to double click, and what we can do is make the airplane larger. There we go. That gets rid of that extra stuff. You can also, the extra footage from my interview in the background that I didn't want, you can also animate photos. It's pretty cool. So let's say that I wanted to have, let's say I wanted to have this airplane start over here at the start of a clip. At the end of the clip, I'll have it show up on the left. And so when I go from start to end, it will look like it is animated. So let's click Done Editing, and we're going to watch. Hey, not bad, right? Yeah, there's some really cool stuff in there too. You can also do, here, let me get rid of this, green screen and blue screen. So I'm going to take a picture with blue in it, double click, and I can, look at that, get rid of the blue or the green or whatever background your students are on. And imagine now if I combine this with a nice animation, look at that. Now it looks like there's an aeroplane flying across my face. So you can have some effects that you can make your own if you wanted to. Back to you, Mark.
All right, thank you, Chris. WeVideo is a great tool. It's free. Now, recognize that with the free account, you do have very limited storage. I think you can make about. I think when I made a video with a free account, there was about 3.5 minutes when I topped out. So it is limited as far as space goes. But students creating videos, it'll typically be within that 3-minute realm. Otherwise, it becomes very huge assignment for them. And so don't worry about that. If you're lucky enough to be at one of the Nevada Ready 21 schools, then at this point you have a full account, a paid account for that. Okay, so we've talked about some of the tools. Quick couple of other notes really fast before we wrap up. One of the areas that really presents a lot of difficulty when working with video is the different formats that work with cameras and the editing tools. I think that in the last couple of years, this has really almost sorted itself out. But I used to get students that would turn in videos in all sorts of different formats, and a lot of them were formats that I couldn't open. And so, as you are having students create assignments, be sure that you are set very specific guidelines that you want all of the files turned in as MP4 files, which are fairly universal. We typically don't see the WMV files very much anymore, or the FLV or the flash files. Some of those files that would make things potentially a little bit more difficult. So be careful. As you're walking through the process, make sure that students are submitting the assignment in a format that you are able to view. And publishing. Where can these be published? I used to have my students bring in their videos on flash drives. But now students can publish their videos online, and they can provide a link to you, which makes it really easy. If you're have your students post it on their upload it to their Google Drive, they can simply send you a link to that file on their Google Drive, and you can open it up, and it's really easy for you to do. And then you're not so worried about file extensions. If it will play for them on Google Drive, it'll play for you. Even some things can be posted on YouTube. I like to post these webinars on YouTube. I go through and do a little bit of editing, cut out all of my and any dead time, and some of the extraneous information that's not necessary. but these videos can be posted on YouTube. As you're doing that, I always tell kids, my requirements were you put your first name and your last initial, not your last name. I'm trying to be aware of student safety, and don't say I'm at White Middle School. Be very careful about protecting student safety. We are out of time. We appreciate you coming on, joining us today, especially with our internet difficulties that we've had in half the district. Tara asked, do you have to have media permissions to post videos online? Yes, 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 yes. If students are going to be in anything that leaves the classroom, they need to have completed a media release as part of and that's on the acceptable use form. So be very, very careful if students are posting. I never posted videos of students. If students posted videos of themselves and submitted them to me, I didn't post them. And so that's something to really be careful of, and making sure that you're not posting anything that shouldn't be. But as students were creating the videos, like I said, I made sure that they didn't give any identifying information on that. Let's give Chris a big round of applause, please. Thank you, Chris.
And thank you for having me, Mark.
Happy New Year, everybody, and have a wonderful 2017.
Adios.